Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? Hope you guys are all having a great Thursday morning, afternoon, wherever you are across the old country here. And if you find yourself listening to this, welcome to another edition of Ben and Vinny and Ben. Still don't know the name of it. Just typically we do these on Mondays, but we had to change a little bit for Thursday. We also haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, so it's good to be back on this consistent schedule, especially after what we saw from Monday night from this 49ers team. So I'm Vinny, and as always, I'm joined by 49er SI writer and FSU student journalist Ben Meyerson. Ben, how are we today?
I'm doing excellent, Vinny. I was out these past few weeks. I'm glad to be back. And what a weird turn of events for these 49ers. We
I
thought
know.
we thought we pinned them down and knew exactly who they are. And now they just, came out and completely changed what I thought about them this season. So, quite a roller coaster season, I would say. But yeah, I'm excited to talk Niners always.
Yeah, so let's get right into that game, right? Because the week before, Niners lose 31-17 against the Cardinals. They didn't have Kyler Murray, nor did they have DeAndre Hopkins, but that was a game in which they kind of just, fell asleep, and Arizona was able to get that win. But then you go to this week in the game that, it was funny. I was talking in Twitter Spaces. Like, one of the main things that I wanted to see was just players getting healthy. Like, stay healthy. Like, don't get a lot of players hurt in this game because I wasn't expecting them to win. But then they go out and they make it reminiscent of what we've seen with the 49ers and Rams matchups last year. In the past couple of years, the 49ers completely dominated this game right from the jump. And also, Jimmy Ward getting 2 picks on the first 2 defensive possessions. They ran the ball over 44 times, and that was something that, I was talking about heading into this week in terms of, or heading into this game in terms of plans and, what I wanted to see if they were to get a win, which was time of possession. That was the main thing, and they were able to do that, keeping the ball for 40 out of the 60 minutes of the game. That's going to help you a lot in terms of your chances of winning. And, defensively, I was looking for the team to kind of maybe, it was weird because I didn't really have much like tips for the defense, in the sense that, did you really want to make Matthew Stafford throw against the corners that the 49ers have, or do you want to play into the Sean McVay system and have them run the ball a lot? But
Right.
I think obviously momentum changed with those first 2 interceptions on those first 2 drives. And I think another thing too that could have thrown them off was something that happened earlier in the week, was when they signed Odell Beckham Jr. And then like a day or 2 after the signing, Robert Woods tears his ACL. So maybe there could have just been, planning for, on the Rams side, planning for Robert Woods to play this game, and kind of maybe force feeding it to Odell in a way, and kind of just saying, Odell, hey, you be Robert Woods. That's not the case. That's not as simple. It's a lot easier said than done. And I think that was prevalent of that Monday night win. And I think you saw a little bit of a glimpse of what this team should be, with the roster and the, creativity of of not just their head coach and offensive coordinator and Kyle Shanahan, but also the creativity that D'Amico Ryans has been able to display. So overall, Ben, I'll throw it to you now. What were some of your thoughts after this, really big win for this 49ers team?
Yeah, this was huge for the 49ers. I honestly think, you know, I don't want to give a cop out answer, but I feel like we learned more about the Rams during this game than we did the 49ers, and that maybe we crowned the Rams a little too early this season, right? They had that huge win over Tampa Bay week 3. But I think if you look besides that at the rest of their wins, the teams that they've beat are, combined in 19-35-1, teams like the Lions, Texans, not a lot of great teams in the NFL, teams they should really be beating up on. So I'm not so sure if this game taught me a lot about the 49ers as much as it kind of maybe got that shine away from the Rams. I think this Rams team, they lost to the Titans the week before, and we all thought, they would crush the Titans. And hell, the Titans lost Derrick Henry, and the Titans just rolled right through them. And obviously that Tennessee team is a lot better than people expected, but I really think it's going to be interesting seeing that second matchup versus the Rams. Maybe they're going to need that game headed towards the end of the season, because right now it looks like Arizona's the runaway favorite. They've been doing what they've been doing, and Kyler's been hurt these last few weeks. So, even though that's more of a macro perspective, that was kind of one of my biggest takeaways from this game, is that this Rams team just isn't as good as I thought they were. But in terms of takeaways for the 49ers, one thing, I want to start on the offensive side of the ball. They have an identity. That identity is Elijah Mitchell, and that identity is running the ball down teams' throats. Now, I think it's unfortunate that Trey Sermon still leaves this game with absolutely no carries. I saw him on the sideline a few times, so that was interesting, right? You saw him in that 28, the red. Oh, I saw him high-fiving Jeff Wilson Jr. and Elijah Mitchell. Still, he didn't play at all. I don't get that. But yeah, this is an awesome game for Deebo Samuel. Really felt like a coming out party for him in terms of, that national media, national perspective. He's a star wide receiver now. He's not just a really good young receiver. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. And that's going to, kind of be one of our next topics. But Deebo is just electric, man. And I think, him along with Elijah Mitchell, that's going to be the 49ers offense moving forward. And if they can get reliable production out of them, there's no reason they shouldn't put up 24, 25 plus points on every single team for the rest of the way. I really think so. And if they don't put up those kind of points, if they don't have that kind of production that we saw in this game, that's on Kyle, because he's shown the ability to do that. And I think they just need to commit more to that identity. I think sometimes they've been getting away from it. If anything, it's funny because in the last few games, I didn't think they ran the ball enough. In this game, if anything, I thought they ran Elijah Mitchell maybe a little too much, right?
Yeah,
so
27 carries for him.
That's a lot, and he got hurt. Obviously, he'll be fine. He'll play, it looks like. But that's a guy you really, really need this season. And if he gets hurt, things get scary. So I think moving forward for the offense, you got to be better about finding that balance. You can't go all the ways one way or the other, barely run Elijah Mitchell or, give him 25 plus. Somewhere in that 18 to 22 range feels about right for me. Anything more than that is just overkill. That's why you have guys like Jeff Wilson Jr., Hasty, Sermon. Play these guys, right? And then on the defensive side of the ball, Jimmy Ward is so important to the 49ers. I think we forget about Jimmy Ward because he hasn't had an interception since 2016. But right now, he's the best 49ers coverage player in the secondary. There's no question about that. And I think without him, they would have lost this game, or this game just wouldn't have gone the way it went, right? The 49ers wouldn't have grabbed the momentum straight out the gate and put the beat down like on the Rams. I think that's the reason they not only won this game, but the reason that they were able to throttle this team is because Jimmy Ward is so excellent in coverage, and he makes up for all the lack of secondary help that we've been talking about all season, right? You can't change this corner room at this point in the season. It is what it is, but having a guy like Jimmy Ward really helps cover up some of those mistakes that we know are going to happen anyways. So yeah, I think for this defense, Jimmy Ward is so much more important than people give him credit for. And the 49ers really, they don't have that true leader besides Fred Warner, right? That guy who's going to be in the locker room who people respect in that way. And I feel like Jimmy Ward's that guy. And he even said that him, Armstead, and Warner had a captain's only meeting with the defense the Sunday night before the game. It seems like it helped a lot. So if Jimmy Ward can emotionally get this defense back on track, to me, that's the biggest thing here, right? We know how valuable he is as a coverage player. We know how great a safety he is. And we know how much, like I said, he's going to really help out that struggling secondary. But what the 49ers needed and have been like yearning for since the bye week is an energy boost, a leadership boost, and kind of, you know, that shot, that emotional shot in the arm. And I feel like they have that now with Jimmy Ward. And if they can continue this momentum, it's great. Awesome. But they have to sustain it, right? This can't just be a one-off thing where, hey, we got up for this game against the Rams. Now we're going to play the Jags next week. That game, you know, whatever, right? You can't have that attitude. So if moving forward they can keep the same energy that they had for this Rams game, I think they'll have continued success. But it's really just a question to me of are they going to keep doing what they've been doing, or is it going to be, you know, more of what we saw before last week, right? Which was a team that didn't really have an emotional leader, a team that didn't really get up for games, and a team that was honestly a bit of a letdown, you know, especially in that Arizona Cardinals game. So Jimmy Ward seems like a key piece for them, and I just want to see if they're going to keep that energy moving forward.
Yeah, and with that, you know, I think the best players on the team really showed up, and that's going to help really with the long-term success of this team, right? I know it sounds obvious, like obviously when your best players are playing well, you're going to have a better chance. But you talk about guys like Jimmy Ward that stepped up, Debo Samuel. He was playing running back for a couple of those for like 5
Yeah.
carries, and that's credit for Kyle for getting creative ways to get the ball into, you know, arguably your best offensive player right now on this team. And
Yeah, and that's something Kyle didn't do
yeah,
early in the season, right, Vinny? I mean, I don't
yeah,
know how many times we would say after games, like, get guys involved behind the line of scrimmage. We've seen Kyle do it before. We saw him do it with Ayuk, especially last year. But I feel like that's something we haven't seen all season. And now, finally, he's giving the ball to Debo in that way, keeping teams, you know, honest with playing him and deploying him that kind of way, even though he can be that true receiver like we saw in this game, right? I think
yeah.
that's the thing people need to get around to, is that Debo can, in equal parts, be that gadget guy and be that true dominant receiver. And
Yeah.
they just have to be willing to use him both ways.
Yeah, and I think George Kittle really stepped up in this game as well.
Yeah,
There have been a
that
couple.
was a great block on Von
Yeah, that
Miller.
was a great block on Von Miller, obviously, but there have been a couple times where he had some drops on some catchable passes, and but he made that big touchdown catch. It was a good ball by Jimmy too, and Jimmy played well too. And this was like, you mentioned it, you tweeted this before, but like he always seems to do just enough to make sure that, you know, he isn't benched. And that's a good thing for the 49ers in the sense that they're winning games because of it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, the stat line, throwing the ball 19 times may not be like appealing for um the, you know, fans that want to see the air raid of the 49ers, because I think they could bring that if they wanted to. But, you know, you see the efficiency, 15 and 19, no turnovers as well. I think that's a big step. And yeah, the stat line may not look as good, but, you know, this was an important game for not just the 49ers to win, but also Garoppolo to play well and to
yeah,
keep that starting job throughout the year. So credit definitely needs to go to him as well.
for sure. And I think, you know, people always talk about how efficient Jimmy Garoppolo is and all this. I don't think he's actually as efficient as people say, but in this game in particular, he was incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
And the important thing with efficiency isn't necessarily, you know, completions versus attempts, stuff like that. It's how you get those yards, how you're
Yeah.
getting those completions. And I think the eye test tells you when you watch Jimmy, he didn't sail balls like we're used to seeing him sail balls, right? There were really maybe like one or two errant passes. Even then I don't specifically remember them being as bad as, like, for example, that Ayuk throw when Ayuk fumbled the ball in the red zone against Arizona. That ball was way over Ayuk's head when he caught that. So, you know, when Jimmy's able to really get his ball placement under control, he's a very good quarterback. It's just, you know, is he going to revert back to what we saw versus Arizona, which I don't even want to pin that game on him necessarily, but there are 3, 4, 5 throws in that game where you can see the ball placement, and um, it's not great by Jimmy. But against the Rams, I didn't see any of that, Vinny. I thought his ball
No.
placement was perfect, which is, to me, that's usually the problem I have with Jimmy, right? Even though he does get those efficient numbers, he gets a great QBR, PFF, whatever, all that crap. Um, his ball placement was excellent against the Rams, and I think that's got to be the
Yeah.
important thing for him moving forward. In fact, I think that's the most important issue for Jimmy is ball placement, right? And if he can continue to do what he did against the Rams, man, Trey Lance isn't playing anytime soon, and I don't think 49ers fans should be mad about that. Like, I know we were all patiently waiting for him to fail, but the fact is that he's not going to fail, at least not in a catastrophic way, which is really funny because that's kind of what we expected from Jimmy Garoppolo. So to see him kind of do this, I don't want to say 180 on his career, but really change how people think about him and just how much of a game manager he is. Like, I've been impressed by Jimmy. I really
Yeah.
have been, and he's changed my mind on a lot of stuff about him.
And we've said before, there is an understanding that at least we believe that Trey Lance is going to be starting for this team next year.
Absolutely,
So
no question about
so
it.
so with that, with Garoppolo playing well this year and the rookie quarterback class not being as good as this year's class or past year's class, and teams that are going to be looking for quarterbacks are going to maybe inherently be asking for a little bit more. So you see the
Right.
production from Garoppolo and them getting wins. It's not helping the team this year, but it's also helping the team, heading into next year for teams
Right.
looking to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo.
It,
And it may be not won't be as good as what it could have been after that Super Bowl run.
no, but
Um,
we're past that. That's the
but
past right now.
but it could have been, it would have been better than, say, if they were to trade him after a bad game or before the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point because
So
I think a lot of people did want to trade Jimmy at the trade deadline. In fact, I was one of those people that was right there. But one team I want to throw out before we get to our next topic, Vinny, in terms of future teams for Jimmy Garoppolo, what about Pittsburgh? I
yeah,
think that's a team that obviously is going to need a quarterback moving forward. There's no, like you said, there's no clear guy in the draft at least who will be comfortable starting right away. And I
there's
feel like he's
not a lot of free agent quarterbacks next year
not
either.
a lot of, unless they're gonna go get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't know who they're gonna acquire. So, yeah, Jimmy might be a really good option for a team like Pittsburgh, right? Who doesn't necessarily want to trade 2 or 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson, but need a starting quarterback. I
Mhm.
feel like that's kind of a perfect landing destination for him right now, and I
Yeah,
can see it already. I think he fits perfectly in that offense, and
yeah,
like him versus Ben Roethlisberger right now, I'd take Jimmy, and I think the
yeah,
Pittsburgh Steelers would too.
yeah. And there I saw something too about New Orleans potentially being a spot for him.
Hey, don't give up on
No,
Jameis. Yeah, we're not
that's
giving
what I'm
up on
saying.
Jameis.
Jameis is, I think Jameis is, I'm not going to say he's better, but like Jameis is very suitable in that offense. And
Jameis is
uh,
more intriguing than Jimmy Garoppolo is,
yeah,
right? You kind
yeah.
of know what you're getting with Jimmy. With Jameis, it's all
Because like
upside.
Jameis threw for 5,000 yards. Like he
30
did
for
throw
30.
30 picks, 30. He did throw 30 picks, but like 35 touchdowns is still, a pretty impressive stat. And maybe the Eastern Illinois connection with Sean Payton and Jimmy Garoppolo reignites, but who knows?
That would be a good one.
Washington will be looking for a quarterback still, I think, unless they try and trade up for Desmond Ritter or
Carolina
whoever.
might be looking for a quarterback. I mean, that's a team that,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to get too.
There are teams that'll need
Oh,
quarterbacks
yeah. I
next
don't
year.
want to get too off topic, but man, Carolina's got to be one of those teams right now who's kicking themselves about not drafting Justin Fields. That
Yeah.
is a tough spot to be in right now.
Yeah. Could you imagine Justin Fields in that Carolina team? Oh, that would have been great for him and for the Panthers, but you know, like, could you imagine if Jimmy Garoppolo was a Seattle Seahawk?
Oh, I could
Oh,
see it. I could see it. I feel
who
like he would come
knows,
back
man?
to haunt the 49ers, honestly. Like, I
He
don't I
just
want
had ripped. He
I
just
want I,
rips 500 yards, 4 touchdowns.
God, I just get Jimmy out of the conference, out of the division. Just get him
Yeah,
as far away as possible. Pittsburgh.
that's not gonna happen. By the way, there's no way he's gonna be a Seahawk.
Hey,
Imagine,
who knows? Russell Wilson's probably going to be somewhere else next season.
yeah,
Jimmy's going to
yeah,
be on the move. Who
yeah.
knows, man? Who knows?
So moving on to someone who hopefully is in a 49er uniform for a long time,
I think
Debo
he will be.
Samuel. Deebo
Oh,
Samuel. I think he's making a really, really good case this year to get a big contract next year. So like looking at Deebo's stats this year, 54 receptions, 86 targets, 979 yards, second to Cooper Kupp, who has 1,114 yards. Keep in mind that's roughly 30 receptions less. Deebo has 30 less receptions than
and one less game.
yeah, and one less game as well. 5 touchdowns, averaging 108.8 yards per game. He does have 2 fumbles. But with all of that and given the context of this season and how well he's playing, do you think Deebo Samuel should? Because I think it would be ignorant to say that he's not in the offensive player of the year conversation.
For sure, yeah.
Do you think he's the front runner right now for it, or is there another guy that you look at that could, I think you could make the case for Cooper Kupp. I think that's a guy that maybe could be leading, and if they don't give it this is if they don't give it to a quarterback.
Right.
But sometimes they don't. I mean, the past few years
This doesn't look like a year where a quarterback's going to win this award necessarily, right? So I think when you look at the award that way, the guy I'm actually kind of penciling in right now is Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
And that's, he has 937 yards right now, 9 touchdowns. He's probably going to finish the season with 1,800 yards, 15, 16 touchdowns. To me, that's the kind of season that wins clear and obvious offensive player of the year. I think really the only way I see a path where Deebo Samuel wins this award is if he does get 2,000 yards. I think he should be in contention, and I think he probably should win the award. Even then, I'm not quite so sure he wins it because I think there will be other guys that are going to be so close in the race. And I think their teams are going to win more because of them, right? I think a guy like Jonathan Taylor, if the Colts make it to the playoffs or that last wild card or one of those last wild cards in the AFC, and it's going to be because of Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be the reason they win. So I think when I look at it that way, I feel like other teams are going to have better records and they're going to get into the playoffs because of those players, right? I think Deebo Samuel's problem is that Elijah Mitchell's doing so well that he's created the identity for this offense, right? And I think that's great for the 49ers team. But in terms of Deebo Samuel winning Offensive Player of the Year, I think it takes away from him a little bit. Just so, I think because of that, right, he's not the lone star on his team, at least in terms of production. I feel like another guy is going to win this award. And I feel like it's probably going to be Cooper Kupp, if not Jonathan Taylor. I just think it has to be one of those two right now. So
yeah,
I just don't really see that path for Deebo unless, one of those guys gets hurt or their teams lose enough to where the 49ers record is similar.
Yeah.
And
I
just don't see that.
Yeah. So then I guess my question to you would be like, what team would be worse between those 3 guys that you just named, right? Deebo Samuel, Jonathan Taylor, and Cooper Kupp. If you were to take each of those guys out of their team, what team would be the worst? And I think that's where I think you can maybe make the argument that I think the Colts.
They have other running backs, right? That's the argument.
Like Naheem Hines and Marlon Mack. I think is still there. Yep. Like so I think you can maybe even do you make the argument that the Niners would be the worst team out of those 3? Like where would the 49ers be this year without Deebo Samuel? That's
a great point. And I think that's the argument for Deebo, right? I think you could make that same argument with Cooper Kupp though. And that's kind of the part that's kind of the tough part of this conversation because the Rams have shown that they can run the ball with Cam Akers or without him, right? They replaced him with Darrell Henderson, who's still a really good back, but they're able to get that other production from somewhere else. I think the Cooper Kupp situation is very similar to the 49ers situation in that, do they have other good receivers? Sure. But are they what they are without him? I don't think so. So yeah. I think if we're going that route, because the Rams have won more, Cooper Kupp, you got to give them that edge, I think.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part about the Rams too. It's like they have really good starters, especially at their receiver spot, but you saw some of those guys that were in that game against the Niners, like guys we've never even heard of. Like we heard of Van Jefferson before,
Right.
but like, if Cooper or OBJ were to get hurt, like Van Jefferson's a receiver too. And they've already had injuries to
Robert Woods,
Robert Woods, and earlier their running back tore their ACL, Cam
Cam
Akers.
Akers, yeah.
So I mean, like, so they could face a little bit of trouble. And I think earlier to your point about maybe we were a little too like hyped up on the Rams. I think that's something further on in the season if one of those guys gets hurt, especially if one of their maybe not as much now, but like say an Aaron Donald or Jalen Ramsey has to miss a few games. That's another big loss for them that they would have to really try to find some assets to
Wow.
fill in for those spots. So
And
they are paper thin in terms of depth.
well, and you
But
look at the rest of their schedule, Vinny. It's ugly for the Rams, right? Their next couple games are Packers, Jags, which Jags isn't tough, but Packers, Jags, Cardinals, Seahawks, Vikings, Ravens, 49ers to finish the season. So this is a team that could very easily have a different outlook by the end of the season. Like they got all their easy games out of the way already. The only game that they're definitely going to win is really that Jacksonville game. And listen, I know Seattle's not great, but that's still not an easy winnable game for them.
no,
So I think looking at the
especially the
Rams
back,
yeah, especially looking at the Rams schedule, it's gonna be a tough sledding for them in these last 7 weeks, 8 weeks of the season. So
yeah, and then
it's ugly.
switching over to the Niners schedule, you look at it. This is where you could really look, and they can really take advantage of these next few games, and that'll go into our next topic here. Kyle Shanahan looked like Kyle Shanahan in that game last week. It's a weird thing. Like it seems like Sean McVay's kryptonite now is Kyle Shanahan over these past 2-3 years, and you wouldn't expect that knowing that McVay has had more success than Kyle Shanahan. So looking at these next few games, like you just mentioned, you got Jacksonville this week, then you have a home game against the Vikings, and then you go on the road to Seattle. Then after that, you go Bengals. Then you play the
Texans.
Is it Falcons first?
I know the rest of the schedule includes Titans, Falcons, Texans, Vikings,
Titans.
Bengals.
So the Titans game is the one game that you look at where you may like. I don't know if they have like a realistic. I mean, I think they have a shot again, but like that's a game that you look at, especially on a short week, traveling on the road. That's going to be really, really tough.
That's a scheduled loss.
Yeah. But looking at the other teams and the other games that you have, these are all very much winnable games that you can put that can put the 49ers back in, playoff contention. And, I was talking with the recording that Nate and I did on Tuesday. He was saying, being very optimistic as Nate likes to do, as most 49ers fans like to do, not just Nate, but like, there's a potential that the division is still up for grabs.
Right.
And I don't think it's completely out of the question, but I don't think that should be the 49ers, priority right now. I think it's just win one game at a time and just not focus on what everyone else's situations are, but focus on what the 49ers situation is. And, that all goes back to Kyle Shanahan. I think, is he hitting his stride? I think this is a good sign where he's could be hitting his stride at the right time. But you hope that, I think something that could, be a deficit for this team is, this game isn't a primetime must-win game at home against a division rival. This is on the road,
trap game.
On the road, 10 a.m. against a 2-7 team that has not much to offer, at least for this year. So that's where I'm looking at the consistency of this week heading into this coming week. And if they can put up a similar performance like that, then I'll feel a lot more confident about this team and potentially making a playoff run. But I think Monday night really showed some promise as to Kyle Shanahan getting back into his own groove and own rhythm, and you can hope he can hit that stride for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think the hope, or I guess the worry really, is that did they just get up for a big Monday night game that they needed to win, right? Did Kyle feel the pressure and know what they needed to do during that game? Because Vinny, if they lose that game, we're talking about they have to start Trey Lance this game. They have to play Trey Sermon. They have to play Diamador Lenore. They have to play Ambry Thomas. They have to play Aaron Banks. Like, we're talking about the season as if it's over if they lose that Monday night game. So I
Yeah.
think the worry is really that, you got up for this Monday night game. You didn't get up for that Arizona game. Is that pattern going to repeat itself? Because right now they haven't gotten up for those kind of lackluster games. The game right against the Colts on Sunday Night Football, a game where the 49ers are probably the better team, but it's very easily a coin flip type of game where the Colts had enough talent to be able to beat the Niners. So is Kyle Shanahan back in his bag? Maybe, but he's got to remain consistent and prove that for the rest of the season. And they cannot have any off weeks, in my opinion. That I think
No.
they've shown, like I've been saying, that there are certain games that they're getting up for and certain games that they're not. That can't happen anymore. And with
No.
the playoffs as tight as they are, if Kyle tries to do that type of crap for the rest of the season, Kyle's going to be right back where he was this time last week, which is everyone and their mothers is on Kyle Shanahan, right?
Yeah.
To the point where people were legitimately talking about firing him. So is Kyle back in his bag? I don't know. We'll see. I'm not quite convinced yet, but I think he certainly has the opportunity to prove that he's back in his bag. He's just got to do it,
Yeah, exactly. And with this, the one guy that you look at heading into this Jacksonville game that you don't want to get going is James Robinson, especially not just because he's their best player, but especially seeing the struggles the 49ers have seen on the run defense end. James Robinson could have a really good game here, and who knows? Trevor Lawrence is still Trevor Lawrence, and yeah, I think the numbers and like his play is a little bit out of context in the sense that Urban Meyer's his head coach, and like they're just not a good team. But nevertheless, he could show up and go all Clemson mode and just go absolutely insane. So you can't really take any risks in that. And that I think we say this all the time. Any team on any given Sunday could win, and you
Yep.
saw that that Thursday night game of last week when the Miami Dolphins beat the
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens, right? So who are even worse than the Jaguars? Like Miami's like bad.
Yeah.
So like I think that's just something that I think Kyle was cognizant of. I think I really liked how he didn't give game balls at the end of the game last week. Kind of just like asking for that again, like next week, like understanding, hey, this is good this week, but we need to keep doing this, and we need
Yeah,
to
it's
prove
more
ourselves that
that,
we can do that.
what they did on Monday night was the expectation, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're supposed to do. So for them not to do it all season, do it during that game, it's big for Kyle and it's big for this team. They just
exactly.
got to keep this momentum moving forward, right? You can't waver.
Yeah. So our last two topics here. One is positional battle individually, as some guys are coming back from injury this week. Jaquaski Tart, one of those guys, is being I think his IR window opened up this week, and another guy that we're going to really focus on was Dre Greenlaw, and there's been a lot of talks recently as to who should be that starting linebacker next to Fred Warner. Aziz Al-Shaair has been playing really well. He had 14 tackles in that last game, leading all 49ers. He's been playing really well, filling in for Greenlaw. So, the question is here, do you keep Aziz? I spelled Aziz wrong in the thing. My bad. I just noticed that. It's E-E-Z, not A-Z-Z-E-Z. Or do you re-implement Greenlaw back into this defense?
I think you stick with Aziz.
I
And
think
for
so too,
me,
yeah.
For me, I think it's pretty obvious, honestly. I think with Greenlaw at this point, right? You brought up the 14 tackles that Aziz made in this past game. I think Greenlaw's made 15 total, like in his career, or what's the number? It's
It's
I just
something like tackles. I think it's like a tackles for loss stat.
right. That's what it was.
Here, Jordan Splash Cousin tweeted it. I'll
Yeah, go check that out. But I just prefer Aziz to Greenlaw, and I think it's gotten to the point where Greenlaw, I think they need to play him to show him to other teams, right? So you can trade him in the offseason, because that's really all the value I see left in him. I think Aziz can do his job the same, if not better. And I think because of that, you got to stick with him moving forward. You have to have some consistency next to Fred. And if they do that, I think you got to get rid of Greenlaw at the end of the year. So this is more a conversation of team building to me. Is do you want to have to let go of Aziz or have to let go of Greenlaw? And right now, I prefer to let go of Greenlaw and trade him and cash in on that value he has, because I think around the league he does have that kind of, maybe third round pick sort of value, where the 49ers need to recoup any draft capital they can right now and build up those picks, right? So if they can do that by getting something for Greenlaw at the end of the season, you just got to play it out the right way and make sure he's healthy for that next team. So I think stick with Aziz. You get his chemistry to keep building with Fred Warner, keep building with this defense. And that way, like I said, you can just cash in on Greenlaw's value, because I think he does have more value than Aziz right now around the league. So yeah, I think you got to stick with Aziz and then move on from Greenlaw in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think Greenlaw has more value, I think, than Aziz Al-Shaair.
Yeah.
In the sense that, the main highlights of his career is that play against. I think he's still a really good player. I think a lot of teams could use on their defense. But given the continuity that D'Amico Ryans has been able to create over these past few weeks with Aziz and Fred Warner, I think trying to mess that up and trying to re-implement that Greenlaw, I think could cause some more struggles for this defense. So I think that's where I think you would lean more towards Aziz Al-Shaair continuing to start. I'm still looking up I think tackles for law. I think it's that tackles for loss stat, right?
Right. Yeah. It should
be. So he has 5 this year. I think Greenlaw has 4 in his entire career.
Yeah.
Let me double check on that.
For his career, Greenlaw has 10 TFLs in his career.
Yeah, and I think and I don't know the Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah. So, okay. That's weird though, because I think that would be. I know what tweet you're talking about, and I know like that stat that you're trying to bring up. I just can't find it.
Yeah, I don't think we can right now, but we can move on to the next topic.
But nevertheless, we think Aziz Al-Shaair should just continue to start, just to have that continuity.
Yeah,
and I think he's a little better, but I think he's a better coverage guy too.
Agreed.
So I think you should keep him there. Lastly, these last few minutes that we got here, thanks, Amin. I know I spelled Aziz wrong. Is this team playoff bound? I think you can. I think you can make an argument for both. I think that Vikings game for me is going to be huge.
Yeah,
because that's one of the teams that you're competing against, fighting for that spot. There's no reason to say that they can't. It's just we were in a similar spot last year as well with this team, and I think there were maybe some similar conversations to be had about it. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? Honestly,
to me, the two most important games on the schedule, now that I'm looking at it, really are two back-to-back games. Actually, it's that December 5th Seattle game and that December 12th Bengals game, right? I think
Yeah, that
outside of
Bengals game
that,
is going to be huge too.
yeah, I think outside of those games, it's fairly easy to predict where those games are going to go. Obviously, Vikings game is a bit of a coin flip, but I think across the board you can pretty much predict where all the rest of the games
At
are going
least
to go.
where at least it should go.
Right, where it should go. So I think for the 49ers, right, if you win both those games versus the Seahawks and Bengals, you make the playoffs. If you lose both those games, you definitely don't make the playoffs. Where it gets interesting is if you split those games. Then I think you're one of those teams where it literally comes down to the last game of the season. But I think if the 49ers can have a clean sweep during those games, even if they lose to a team like the Vikings, right? That would put them at 3-1 over that, because we think they're going to be Jacksonville. So that would put them at 3-1 over that stretch, which would put them at 7-6 after that with 4 games left. 7-6, with games against the Falcons, the Titans. I say you split those, and then the Texans and the Rams. And the Rams might not be playing for anything at that point, or they might be. So, gosh, I really think it's going to come down to just a few games here or there. So is this team playoff bound? I'm going to say yes, and I don't feel great about saying that just because I think they're going to win enough of these games to where it should just push them over the edge. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if they needed to win that game against the Rams, right? And then they lost that game. So, it's going to be interesting. I don't really know where this is going to go right now.
Yeah. So these next games here, on the road at Jacksonville, at home against the Vikings, on the road to Seattle, on the road to Cincinnati. Then you host the Falcons, go to Tennessee on a short week. I think that's 2 days. I think it's on the 23rd. Yeah, it's on the 23rd. So 2 days before Christmas. Keep in mind they're traveling from Cincinnati back to Santa Clara, then going to Tennessee on a short week. So tough. I think that's a lot of miles in those few weeks, and then you go,
man.
Yeah, then you finish those last 2 games with the Texans and the Rams. So the games that they should win, I think we look at, maybe we could come to consensus to, are the Jaguars,
yes,
the Falcons, and the Texans. Those are 3 wins that you should get.
Yeah, so
coin flips that you
Well, let's just add up those 3 wins really quick. That puts them 7-5.
7-5 with those 3.
Yep.
Vikings, that's a coin flip.
Yep.
Let's say they get that.
Okay.
So that puts them at 8-5.
8-5.
Seattle, that's another coin flip.
I say if we're saying they win the Vikings game, let's say they lose that game.
Okay. So then that leaves the Bengals,
the Titans, and the Rams.
Let's give the Titans a lot. So that
8-7.
Titans is probably lost. So they're 8-7. So
then I say they split those last 2 games. I think with the Rams, like I said, the Rams schedule gets really tough at the end of the season. They might be playing for something in that last game, playoff seeding, wild card seeding. So I think that game is going to matter to them. And then with the Bengals, that Bengals team has kind of fallen off a little bit since they were really, really good and in first place, right?
So that would put them at 9-8.
9-8, right there.
So which is to your point, if they can get both of those wins against Seattle and the Bengals, then I think you're really having that conversation.
Yeah. Then I think you're 10-7 right there. I think you're 10-7 if you win those 2 games, and as long as something catastrophic doesn't happen, you're a 10-1 team in my mind.
So say they go 10-7 and they miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right. Is that a disappointing season? Or is it a wasted season?
It's not.
I think that's hard to because I think that's something that you can build off of heading into next year, but that's something that because I think looking back on this whole Trey Lance Jimmy stuff, do you think Jimmy if Trey win that Rams game?
I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And part of that too is because we haven't seen him play enough.
Right.
which I think that's kind of unfair to
Well,
put that on him.
yeah,
But
well, let me put it to you this way. If he plays just as good, if not maybe slightly better than he did against the Cardinals, I think they win that Rams game.
yeah, okay.
So if
So
that's the
then,
baseline for Trey Lance,
yeah,
they win that game.
because I think ultimately, if you get 10 wins in the NFL in an NFL season, that's something that you can really look at and you can build on heading into the next season.
And honestly, this year 10-7 might be enough with the expanded playoffs. Like I know
Yeah,
people even hear 9-8 and they're like, "Oh, you can't make the playoffs." I think a team or two might make the playoffs at 9-8 this season. So
yeah,
I
and I
wouldn't
think
count the Niners out if they're above 500.
no, but I mean, who knows? They could go on a complete madness here and win the rest of their games and go 12-5 to finish the year. I don't
Uh,
think they'll do that, but like if they can
anything
find this,
anything could happen, right?
if they do that, if the Niners win the division this year, Kyle Shanahan is the coach of the year. I'm
Oh my god,
sorry.
yeah.
There's no way anyone else could be the
Yeah.
coach of the year, especially
Well,
given the
and,
how good the division was leading up to this point. And
and Vinny, I think
see,
I tweeted about this, and I know you liked it. Which is this year, the 49ers are like Schrodinger's 49ers, right? You don't know what's gonna happen, and anything could happen one way or the other. You open the box, they're 11-6. You open the box, they're 7-9 or 7-10. Like I think the range of outcomes for this team is all over the place. And I think it's
yeah,
going to be a roller coaster no matter what. So I think that's why, we talked about those 50-50 games. Those are the most important games for the 49ers, right? As
yeah,
long as they're
and you
not going
got
to have one of those
yeah,
letdowns again, right? Because they've shown they can have letdowns, but if we assume they don't have those letdown games, those coin flip games are going to make the difference this year.
yeah, and like half of those remaining games are those coin flip games.
Yes.
Right, because like we said, Seattle's a coin flip, Vikings a coin flip, Bengals a coin flip, and Rams probably are a coin flip.
Yeah.
And then you look at the games that probably aren't going to be are more one-sided, let's say, with the Jaguars, Falcons, Texans, and Titans.
Right.
One of those being a loss. So
Yeah.
you could go. It's funny. They could go 3-5 in those last 8 games. They could go 4-4, like 7-1. Who knows? But I think that's just adding to the excitement of this season, and it's a lot better than being one of those like worst teams like now that like have no hope for the rest of the year and are playing for seedings at this point and hoping.
And I did want to talk about this point, right? Because I think all of us were kind of waiting for the Niners to crash and fail and for the season just to go up in flames, but they keep teasing us, they keep showing us just enough to the point where
they keep fighting too. And I think that's something that you could talk about the leadership lack thereof with Kyle Shanahan, but that is one thing that he has been able to instill with his team.
Oh yeah.
They fight to the last day of the season and I think that's something that you can appreciate. Yeah.
Before this Rams game, I didn't feel like this team did have fight, right? I didn't know what they were fighting for. They didn't seem emotionally invested in this season. Now, if they can have this kind of turning point, at least emotionally as a team, they should be fine. They should be able to right the ship. I just wonder if this is like I said, I think the real question is was this game their Super Bowl, or is this just more, of what we're going to see for the rest of the season? I'm really curious to see.
Yeah, and you hope as a 49er fan, if you're listening, as 49ers fans, we're hoping it's the latter.
Yes.
So that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for everybody that tuned in, left comments. Really appreciated it. Really appreciate it. As always, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Ben's stuff is in the link in the description. Subscribe if you're new. We'll be back next Monday, I believe, on Ben's channel. Ben will actually be at the game this week.
Yes, I will.
So that'll be lots of fun to get his takes being there and all that fun stuff. Is Grant going? Are you going to get
I don't believe he is, actually.
Okay.
I think everyone was intrigued by the potential Trey Lance start, but once that kind of was obviously out of the way, I don't think as many people are coming to this game now. But I know Jesse should be there, so it should be a good time.
Yeah. It should be a fun one for sure. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening. And as always, go Niners. See ya.
Peace.